Much. And again, everyone, you can find information for your questions with the presenters and the proceedings online. So with that, we're going to go to our next presentation. Ariel, take it away.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I know we're close to our quick break, so this was actually supposed to be a poster, but now it's a lightning talk, so I will not take that long. My name is Ariel Taylor Manges. I work for the Charlotte Harbor Aquatic Preserves, and many of you who've been to Watershed Summits before might know of the Charlotte Harbor Estuaries Volunteer Water Quality Monitoring Network, which that's the last time I'll say that. We call it Chevy Walkman. So this poster was intended to just be an overview and kind of serve more for like outreach. So you can go to the next slide. So give you some background. Chevy Walkman was established actually in 1996 in Lemon Bay and then spread out through the rest of the region in 1998. And as of now, we have 46 sites that cross 3 counties and through 6 aquatic preserves. So the 5 aquatic preserves at the office that I work at manages, in addition to Estero Bay. We have around 80 volunteers that sample 19 field parameters and lab parameters. These volunteers are expected to collect samples that like DEP staff is. So we give them an initial training, and that includes how to calibrate and verify for their field instruments in addition to how to collect the water quality samples. And then the data is managed in-house, so we quality check it and then we enter it into an access database, which is accessible if anyone wants it. You can ask me, and we've uploaded this data into Storette and now currently the WIN databases, and then it's also available on Water Atlas. Next slide, please. So why was this established? This program was established to collect a snapshot of the data. The volunteers go out at sunrise, so it's the same time basically every morning, the first Monday of every month. And we wanted to get that baseline like Rebecca talked about earlier with the continuous data, but also see like long-term trends over time. We also wanted, this program serves as outreach with the volunteers. This data is available for stakeholders, agencies, the general public. And then also it's a good way for us to create awareness, and also our volunteers work as surrogates for us. So when they're out there at sunrise and people are out on the fishing pier, the volunteers can they can be advocates for the estuary and for the aquatic preserves. Next slide, please. So the methods, these, again, like I said, the volunteers collect around 19 field parameters. That includes like wind and cloud cover, but also temperature, dissolved oxygen, pH, salinity, and conductivity. Those last 5 I mentioned are with YSI Professional Plus handheld meters. And then the volunteers also collect water samples for analysis. So chlorophyll, turbidity, color, phosphorus, total nitrogen. Those go to our central lab in Tallahassee, and then we were collecting for fecal coliform, but now we've updated to the EPA standards. So we collect for entero or E. coli depending on salinity, and those samples go to the Sanders lab for analysis. Next slide. All right, on to the story. So we didn't do any robust analysis for this poster. It was more or less just seasonal differences within the estuary, because we wanted to break it down by stratum, because each water body, like everyone else, is kind of built on, tells a different story. Another caveat, I've been pretty proud that these volunteers have gone out and collected data every month since 1998. So up until last year, we had to cancel a sampling event for Hurricane Dorian. And then unfortunately, with the global pandemic for COVID, we had to cancel the last 2 months. But the volunteers did go out today to collect field samples, and hopefully next month we'll have a good protocol for social distance sample, like water samples too. So we have a lot of long-term data. Okay, back to the good stuff. So we are focusing on the seasonal differences here. For nutrients, we see higher in nitrogen during the rainy season, which could be expected. And the same is true for phosphorus, so both nutrients. You can see once you get to those upper harbor regions and more towards the rivers, we'll see greater the discrepancy, like the higher differences that could potentially be significant. The only difference would be in Estero Bay. They have a lower total phosphorus during the rainy season, but that might not be a significant trend. Next slide, please. All right, for chlorophyll and color, this has also kind of been laid down before I came here, but the Charlotte Harbor estuary is a pretty color dependent region or water body. So you can see on the right-hand side, there's a pretty big difference in the upper Charlotte Harbor, so the fourth one to the right of the dry and the wet season with that color. And then chlorophyll, you can see that difference too. Notably, the upper Charlotte, Pine Island Sound, and upper Lemon Bay's average in rainy season, they're pretty high. So you can go to the next slide, please. All right, and then turbidity, again, you can see those seasonal differences. Notably would be Estero Bay in the dry. We see like higher in the dry than in the wet season, which might seem counterintuitive for some people. But Estero Bay has that pretty significant difference. And that might just be because it's a shallower system. And then for fecal coliform, like I said before, this data we stopped collecting in 2018. And just because we've had a couple years of the Entero or E. coli, we didn't look at that. So you can see those seasonal differences. And notably, these are mean averages. So we could have had a few really high hits in, let's say, upper Lemon Bay, and that's what would have affected the mean. Upper Lemon Bay and parts of upper Charlotte stratum, those sites also include some creek sites, and the tidal creeks they'll have like a higher background of fecal coliform. That doesn't necessarily mean there's like leaky septics. That could be saying something else. So that's another reason why we switched over to Entero. And next slide, please. All right, so briefly for some conclusions, we think that coordinating and training these volunteers has produced high quality, valued data, and it's engaging citizen scientists in stewardship of the aquatic preserves. This data is and can be used for a variety of purposes, in addition to providing that background health or in the statuses of the estuary. It's also used for regulatory criteria implementation, like the numeric nutrient criteria and TMDLs. And it takes a village to raise an estuary or take care of an estuary. So we couldn't have done this without our partners. So the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, we also work with the Estero Bay Aquatic Preserve. They are regional coordinators. And then of course the Central Lab. We have our citizen support organizations that help with buying supplies and with funding volunteer parties. So the Friends of Charlotte Harbor Aquatic Preserves and the Estero Bay Buddies. We partner with the Charlotte Harbor Environmental Center, specifically Cedar Point up in Inglewood. They're coordinators for the Lemon Bay volunteers. And then of course the Coastal and Heartland National Estuary Partnership has been a longtime partner, and they help sponsor the Water Atlas. So I believe, next slide. I think it's just my question slide. So yep, if you have any questions now, that's great. If you want to look at the data, you can always email me and I'd be happy to query it for you. And I don't know, that's it. Is this data being compared to, thanks, to FDEP seagrass data? So I'm actually working on my thesis right now, so not work related. I'm trying to see what I can do with this data. So maybe for the next Watershed Summit, I'll have more of that connection. And then I know that in the past, our office has analyzed this volunteer data, and then we've also done statistical analysis with our seagrass data. So if you're interested, I can send you what we've got. What may be driving upper Lemon Bay bacteria levels? So a lot of those sites in upper Lemon Bay are sampled from tidal creeks, so that there's a different interaction that happens with tidal creeks, and that those fecal hits might be from like litter, like leaf litter, and just the freshwater influences from those creeks in the summertime. And then there has been instances where there were one site in particular where there was, sorry, I'm like reading questions and I'm getting distracted, where it was flagged for the continuous high hits if you could call for them. So we did do like a walk the waterway and try to figure out a point source for where that source might be. And does this data go into WIN? Yes, it does go into WIN. And I could help anyone query that or like pull up that data too. Okay, and then for Estero Bay, it is shallow, so the winter turbidity increases. Is that due to higher winds in the winter or something like increased boat traffic since it's season? Well, it's a shallow system, probably the shallowest average system in the study area. I don't know, maybe Lemon Bay is comparable. So maybe, yeah, maybe just the shallow, but also boat traffic could be possibly part of it. I don't know if that's a good question, but those are kind of our two, what we might think.
We'll oh, there's another question.
Yes, so the volunteers do calibrate the equipment themselves. This is an ever evolving program to keep up with the technology. So what started, when this program started, they were using like titrations and chemicals to measure for dissolved oxygen and pH. And then they moved on to another handheld instrument, and just in 2000, and I think starting in 2014, they got these handhelds. And yeah, we trained them to calibrate and to verify their readings on their own. And they do a great job. Yes, I think they're very impressive. So thanks. Maybe I don't have anything else, so maybe we'll get out early for our break. Thank you.
Well, hang on in case there's any questions that come in the next couple minutes, because you do have a little bit of Q&A time left. But in the meantime, I want to remind everyone who's going for their continuing education credits to please right now go into chat and make sure to enter your name and say that you have participated through the whole session. That end of session chat checkout is required to get the CE credits. So please take a moment to do that. And while we're waiting here, I just want to give a shout out to the entire CHNEP team. We have Nicole Idavia, our research and outreach manager, Andrew Webb, our finance and grants specialist, and we have Ellie Knoll, our conservation associate intern, and Chelsea Bajowski, who is another conservation associate intern. Without them, this event today would not have been possible. So thank you to my colleagues at the Coastal and Heartland National Estuary Partnership. And it looks like, Ariel, we have a couple more questions for you.
Great. I saw the one pop in about do the volunteers have to have a science background? Absolutely not. We've had a variety of backgrounds. Some people, yeah, were retired chemists or other ecologists or consultants in their career days, but we also have worked with artists and teachers, and no, we don't need a science background, just the interest for science. And I also think that something notable is that because this is a long-term program, we've looked at how long we keep volunteers for this program, and we have an average like retention time of 7 years, which I think is impressive, even like to not have that high of a turnover. That's good. Like that's what a company would go for. So we're proud of not having high turnover either. And then we train volunteers as requested. So if you're interested, you can email me, and we just do it on an as needed basis. We do have sites we need to fill, but we are trying to figure out how to navigate social distancing and training in this pandemic world we're living in. So you can always contact me, and we're figuring it out. So thanks.
All right. Well, thank you very much to all of our presenters this morning. And now I'm going to turn it over to Nicole for our closing comments.